Welcome to Right on Track, a songwriting podcast. Thanks to Tone for tuning in. I'm Demi Michelle Schwartz, and I'm thrilled you're joining me on my songwriting journey. So kick back and relax, don't fall flat, and remember, stay right on track. Hello, welcome back to Right on Track. I'm very excited because joining me today is Tara Henton. Hi, Tara.
Hi, Demi. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Yeah, doing well, thank you.
I'm super excited because today we're talking all about songwriting and self-doubt. But before we dive into this, can you share with the listeners a little bit about your songwriting journey so far?
Right. I mean, I've been writing for a very long time, but sort of in the closet, for lack of a better term, like not really putting anything out there. But anyway, I'm a Canadian country singer songwriter. I'm based in Essex in the UK, and as well as songwriting, I'm a primary teacher. I do music teaching, and actually I'm starting as a DJ with a radio station called Nashville Worldwide in a couple of weeks. So I've kind of got a lot of strings to my bow, but yeah, everything's kind of revolving around the songwriting right now. So
That's fantastic. I absolutely love Nashville Worldwide. Chad is fantastic.
yeah, definitely. I'm really, really excited to be joining the team. I think I'll be their first official female DJ host. So
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations.
thank you.
So to kick off our awesome conversation we're going to have, would you like to read a quote by Orrin Woodward?
Of course. So the quote is, "Doubts in your mind are a much greater roadblock to success than obstacles on the journey." And wow, when you sent that through, I was like, that's me. Like that quote is literally me.
I completely feel. So, if this quote is literally you, can you share more about why this quote connected with you the way it did?
I guess, I mean, as I said to you before, I've written songs for a long time, and it was always something that I just did quite naturally. Um, but I think when it got to the point where I started thinking that I wanted to do something with them, there were obstacles in the way, but the biggest obstacle I've come to realize was my own self-doubt and my own, I needed to get out of my own way. And it's taken me probably 30 years to work out how to do that. So it has been quite a long road. Um, but yeah, it's amazing the things that you tell yourself that, it's just negative self-talk, and you say things to yourself so many times that you actually start believing it. And yeah, when you can find a way to somehow put some of those things aside, it's amazing what can actually happen. That's what I'm realizing. So
Yeah, no, I completely agree that I've only been doing songwriting for a couple years. I started taking it more seriously in 2019. So I'm still pretty new. So you can imagine a lot of self-doubt. I'm not over that yet, not even close. But like you said, the negative self-talk, it gets to
it's
you
so destructive,
much.
so destructive and paralyzing, absolutely paralyzing. Like that's about the only word I can think of to describe why I felt stuck for such a long time. Um, and at different points of the process, like I don't know how you find it, but for a long time I was just stuck in this idea that I wasn't good enough at actually writing the songs. Then when I got to the point where I started realizing that maybe I was sort of okay at writing the songs, then it was everything else. Well, nobody's going to actually want to listen to what I'm writing. So what's the point? And it's all of that sort of, it's kind of like unpicking, you're peeling an onion. Like you kind of have to get to the root of what the problem is, sort of causing it all in the first place. But so many different layers of self-doubt and fear, all at play, that just collectively became quite debilitating for me. Like I could not fathom putting something that I'd written out there for fear of what someone else would think of it, for fear that it was stupid, for fear that it was just so many different things. So yeah, I feel like in the last couple of years, I've really somehow managed to work through some of that somehow. It's all still a little bit of a mystery to me.
Yeah, it definitely is a mystery to me too still. And what you were saying about not thinking you were good enough to even put out music, that was definitely the first big step or layer of self-doubt that I faced because I've been releasing my music since November of 2019. And I started writing for fun in 2017, but for literally 2 years, I pretty much kept it secret and didn't tell anybody or show anybody my
Yeah,
songs.
absolutely. Yeah.
I was like, I'm not good enough. Like, who's gonna want to listen to my music? And then I finally showed friends Into Focus, which was my debut single, and they were like, this is so good, put it out. And that gave me a little bit of confidence. And I've noticed, I don't know about you, but for me, what really helps the most with self doubt is those little moments of reassurance and just hearing that you made an impact in someone's life in some way through your music. That's what makes me think, oh, I can do this.
Yeah, and I think also for me, it's, I mean, there did kind of come a point where I got so sick and tired of just being stuck. I don't know how else to explain it, but I just felt like I'd kind of put the work in. I'd gotten a bit better at the craft, and I finally felt like I actually had something to say, and I wanted to put it out there. And it was like I was standing on the edge of this cliff, just kind of looking over, going, I can't make myself take this step, you know. And I mean, I actually this would have been just before the pandemic. I found a really good songwriting club online. It's called I Heart Songwriting Club. I think it's based out of Australia. Anyway, long story short, what it is, you get a task every week, a little writing task with some different components to it, and then you're meant to give yourself an hour and just see what comes out and post it. So there's no pressure that it has to be like a finished song. The point is just to like come to the table, like just get yourself in that habit of writing. That was hugely useful for me. But I'll never forget the very first week when I joined up, I did this task, and I can't even remember. It was back to school because I think it lined up. It was a February, so it was like school start in Australia, and I think it had to have a tempo change in it. So I think I did like a slow verse and a fast chorus. Anyway, I mean, I didn't have any logic skills at that point. Like I didn't have a DAW. I was just me with like my phone propped up on a piano playing this song that I'd written. And I went to submit it, and my hand was shaking. Like I was just like, I can't push the button. Like someone's gonna hear what I've written, and it's complete tosh. Like it's I have no confidence in what I've written at all. It could be just be like the worst thing ever, and people are going to hear it, and what are they going to think of me? And somehow I just found this little nugget of courage, and I hit the button. And I'll never forget. I do apologize. We're here talking in the background. I got my 4-year-old daughter sitting here. I'm trying to entertain her on Amazon Prime. She's being a really good girl, bless her. So yeah, I remember hitting the button. I thought, right, that's done. But of course it's not done, right? Because then I was sitting there waiting for comments to come in. And I remember it was Australia, so their daytime was my nighttime. I was waking up about every 30 minutes or so, checking my phone, seeing if anybody had put something, and like just like I was a basket case. Long story short, I ended up getting some quite half decent feedback about it, which surprised me. Like you were saying, it surprised me tremendously. So yeah, so I guess I kind of had this little, nugget of self, confidence going, okay, well, if I've done it once and people said good things, what do you think the chances are that if I did it again, they might also say good things? And I guess, I was calling it an onion before, like peeling back the layers, but for me, it was almost like a snowball. You kind of had that little middle, and then you just kind of kept building on it.
Right.
And really that process has just carried on up to the point where now I'm releasing a song, which is something I probably should have done 25 years ago, but it's been a journey. It's taken me a long time to get to the point where I actually believed in what I was doing enough, and kind of had people in my life to advise me on what I needed to do to actually make that happen. So yeah, it's nice when the stars kind of start aligning a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is a journey. And I think something huge for me is the feedback and continuing to work so much on my craft helps so much with self-doubt, because when I started, I mean, I tried to write songs, but I didn't really have any way of judging whether or not the song was good. And now that I've done so many retreats and classes and doing co-writes and showing my music to other writers and musicians, you start to kind of gauge whether or not the song is good and comparing it to others. And so I've found that over time I've started to realize, okay, I'm more confident in this song because it's definitely stronger than this one. And that kind of eliminates self doubt because you know the songs you're performing and releasing are good songs. When I started, I didn't really know if it was good or not, so that was a major holdback for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can relate to that. But I think the other thing I've really learned, and I think this, for if I'm being honest, I think this was one of the things that paralyzed me for a really long time, was that I was seeking perfection all the time. And I had this bar set so high, purely down to, I mean, we listen to, such amazing music, and we idolize the songwriters that we grow up listening to. And we somehow think that what's going to come out of us is going to automatically kind of be up there. and,
Yeah.
and you do get there sometimes, but it's just, you have to accept that a lot of stuff just has to come out before you get to that. And sometimes I will just sit down and let myself write a really rubbish song, just to kind of like learn something from it, even if it's not like a top drawer, this is going somewhere song. But I'm just kind of realizing that it's actually more important just to keep writing and to not put the pressure on yourself that every single song you write has to be gold dust. you know that's helped me a lot.
Oh yeah, exactly. 100%. It's so important to get those bad songs out before you can get to the good ones. And that also eliminates self-doubt because you're sitting there and you're like writing and you're like, "Oh, this song isn't that great." But guess what? Nobody has to hear that song. You can just get it out, throw it away, and then move on to a song that turns out much better that you are confident in. So I think a big thing with self doubt is like being mindful and, reflect on the music that you're writing. If you're reflective and start to notice, hey, like these are good songs, you feel that. Like it becomes a gut feeling like this is a good one. And then you're not wondering.
Absolutely, yeah, no, I completely agree with that. But I mean, do you not find, like, even if you're writing a song that you kind of know in your gut that it's not, like, it's probably not going to be one of those songs, but I still learn so much from it. Like and I think before, what was happening with me is I would get, I felt a little bit like, the guy from Sesame Street, the musician, was always banging his head on the piano, like, I'll never get it, never. And you'd start writing a song, you'd get like a little idea, and you think, oh, this is brilliant, and then you'd go, oh no, this is rubbish, and then it would just be another crumpled up bit of paper, metaphorically speaking. And it's really easy to get stuck in that, and then my self-talk was starting to tell me, you don't know how to write a song
Right,
because you never get to the end of the process,
right,
so for me, it's not so much about making sure I write quality every time, it's making sure that I write something that, even if it's not brilliant, at least it's a song and it came out of me. And then, it can get filed in a drawer depending on where I think it is. And actually sometimes you go back to those songs and you almost like harvest like things out of them that you think, well, that verse was really rubbish, but that chorus had a really good hook in it. Um, and it kind of becomes a bit of almost a salvage operation. I don't know how else to
yeah.
explain it,
No,
but
exactly. It's kind of like a common thing, I guess, like internationally. Like, if you're writing a song and you have a really good idea that isn't necessarily good for the song, we all call it the graveyard and we just throw it in the graveyard at the bottom of the document and, like, dig
yeah,
it
yeah,
up
that's
for,
good.
like, other songs. Like, that's a thing. Like, all my friends and I call it the graveyard.
I'm gonna start calling it that. That's awesome.
Uh,
Put it in
so,
the graveyard.
yep, in the graveyard. So, we've been talking a lot about self doubt with our songwriting, but I want to dive a little deeper and talk about specific parts of the process. For you, do you find yourself doubting your lyrics more or the melody, the concept? Is there a certain part of the whole process that you feel like you doubt the most and why?
I think for me, it's probably the lyrics. I mean, sometimes I can write some half decent lyrics, but generally they're a bit like tooth extractions. They take a lot of work to get them kind of distilled down to, um, melodically, I'm usually pretty instinctual, and melodies come to me a bit more easily, as do chord progressions. Like that side of it, I feel is more my, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm a musician first and a lyricist second. Like I know the music I've been doing for a long time. The songwriting was a little bit after that. So, um, yeah. So I think that lyrics is what I've been putting a lot of energy lately into trying to hone my, my actual writing skill rather than my music writing skill, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're kind of opposite because I actually am getting my master's right now in writing popular fiction. So I do a lot of writing, and I got a degree in English and music in undergrad. And so the lyrics, I feel like I'm super strong at just because I'm writing stories all the time, and lyrics are basically short stories. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I'm definitely strong with the lyrics for the most part. I feel like for me, I'm definitely focused a lot on melody, and my melodies are strong mostly, but I find myself doubting chorus melodies a lot specifically just because they should really rise and, be the part of a song listeners remember, and they have to be really strong. And, overall, like the best part of the song, like you don't want to flop on the chorus, even if the verses are amazing, like you need a strong chorus. And so I've been doubting my choruses a lot. And so that's something I'm trying to work through.
Well, see, you need to like sort yourself out, like do co-write with someone who's really good at top lining then, because then that's kind of their thing, isn't it? Like coming up with melodies,
Right.
and especially like really catchy. I mean, I I actually got brought in to do a co-write with a friend of mine named Kelly Williams, and it was exactly that she wanted help with. She was like, I've had some feedback that my melody needs to lift a bit more in places, and I'm like, I'm your girl, you know. So I said, well, what about this? And she was like, oh, it's amazing. And I mean, that's actually another part of my sort of self-doubt journey. Like I think early on I thought, and I don't know where I got this idea from. Maybe it was from movies or books or whatever, when you kind of see like the stereotypical songwriter or whatever. But I think in my mind I thought that to do it you had to be able to do all of it. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
you couldn't have a weak link. You couldn't, like we were just saying, like things that come to you more naturally. And I think when I realized that there were things that I wasn't as good at, I just sort of dismissed myself then and thought, well, if I can't do that, then I can't possibly be a songwriter that anyone's going to take seriously. And I think when you start realizing that, I think there's very, very few people that can honestly say that they can do all of that all the time. Like everybody's got a team, everybody's got co-writers they go to, and production team, like even just like within like a group, like a circle of songwriting friends, you're going to have people that are better at certain things than others. And it's just so liberating to realize that you can still call yourself a songwriter, even if there are bits of it that you find really hard. That
Right,
doesn't
exactly.
matter.
Yeah.
So that was another, I mean, that's an epiphany that I've only really had in the last, like certainly within the last year. Um, and it was just completely lifted the roof off for me. Like, oh, I can be a songwriter just because I can't, like, play guitar like Jimi Hendrix. I can still write songs. That's really cool. Um, yeah. So there's just so many little, I don't know, untruths or things that we sort of absorb that we think, I mean, at least for me, that I sort of felt like, well, because that's true, then that means that I can't be that. And another big one for me, the self doubt for me personally, is like the whole just age thing. Like I'm in my mid 40s, so I there's a whole kind of psychobabble going on in my head about that even right now. Like, what are you doing releasing your first song when you're 45? What's the matter with you? Why couldn't you get your proverbial together 20 years ago? But that's just absolute tosh and nonsense, really. I mean, what difference does it make how old you are? If you've got something to say and people want to hear it, it shouldn't matter. you
No,
know
it doesn't. It doesn't. So please, please don't think that. No, it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just I think we kind of absorb this from society, and certainly from, if you go back in the music industry, not that long ago, actually. I mean, even when I first moved to the UK 20 years ago, independent music was not where it is now. There was this sort of idea that if you were going to make it in music, you had to get a label to buy
Right,
into what you were
exactly.
doing. And labels generally wanted people that were younger, that were marketable, that were. So I think with me kind of growing up with that idea that that's what you had to conform to if you wanted to make it in the music industry, that's also part of what I've kind of unpicked over the last few years, in terms of, no, actually, that I don't really think that's true. So therefore, why am I perpetuating that? So I guess by releasing my single, I'm kind of putting two fingers up to that and saying, well, it shouldn't matter. If you like the music, then listen to it.
You should be super proud of the music you're releasing, and literally age does not matter. I know it's a societal thing, but society needs to get over itself because everybody's stories are worth being told and heard, and it doesn't matter how old you are.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree with you more. But I think sometimes, don't you think there's a difference between what we tell ourselves and what is kind of planted somewhere deep inside us? And it takes a long time to get that out, when it's been sort of a something that you've absorbed and has kind of lived in you for a long time, this belief that doesn't belong there, you know? So logically, I completely agree with you. And I do believe in my heart that it shouldn't matter. I guess I just hope that other people kind of look at it the same way, if
Right.
that makes any
Yeah, no, it
sense. But
definitely does. Yeah, and your point about the whole like conditioning thing and psychology, like we're definitely drilled to think and feel certain ways about things, and it takes time to get over those. And because of all those, whether they be expectations or assumptions or whatever, because of all those things, that really does contribute to self doubt because a lot of the things we're talking about is like acceptance almost, and feeling accepted is tied into society. So, all of these outside forces that we don't really have any control over definitely affect us and our self doubt.
completely. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Definitely. Definitely.
So, we talked a little bit about some ways of overcoming self doubt through feeling those moments of confidence when we get reassurance and nice comments and things like that. But are there any other ways that you found yourself kind of get over your self doubt in certain situations?
I think when I started digging more into the craft and realizing, I mean, another thing that kind of has gradually come into focus for me in the last maybe 5 to 10 years is I don't have to just tell stories about me. I think as a young songwriter, it was very Taylor Swift. It was very, and I don't mean that as any disrespect to Taylor Swift, but I have so much respect for her because so much of her songwriting is just her diary. And I don't have the guts to do that. Like to just, do you know what I mean? Like to lay it out there quite that bare and then say that song was about so and so kind of thing. But I guess maybe that was also part of what was making me really self-conscious about writing, is because it did just feel a little bit like just ripping your shirt open and going, this is me. But I think like when you start realizing that there's a little bit more to it than that, and that you can write from different perspectives, and that just because you're writing a song from your own experience doesn't mean it's autobiographical. Like it's your experiences are kind of fused into what you're writing without it necessarily being like, word for word, this is what happened. And somehow maybe that, I don't know, maybe it's hiding behind it. I know it's part of the craft, but it gives you that little bit of, I'm writing art. I'm not writing my diary entry for you. This is art. This is there's a story here that may or may not be me. I might tell you, I might not. Um, so I don't know. That helped me get over a little bit of the self doubt, was to go more into the storytelling side of songwriting, and to explore different, slightly different perspectives, and not always just writing first person me. Sometimes I'm writing first person, but I'm not really looking at it through my eyes. Um, so that, yeah, that's helped a little bit as well.
That's super interesting because we're kind of the opposite here. All of my songs I've released so far are so like honest and authentic to me. It's so funny you mentioned the diary thing because this episode is releasing on October 17th and my album is releasing October 15th, so it'll be out by the time this episode's out. And my album is literally called Dear Diary because
Oh,
the
that's
songs are literally
amazing.
like
Good for
diary entries.
you. Good for you. No, you're a braver girl than me. Oh my goodness me. Like I think I would just be like, oh, I don't know how I could. But then I don't know. I get the feeling I'm maybe a little bit older than you. So see, I have quite a lot of dirt. So if I aired all of that out, it wouldn't just be one album, right? It would be it would be quite substantial. But yeah, it's interesting though, because I do still feel like very connected to the songs that I write. Because they are from me, and there are huge elements of me in them and my life in them. But I think it's just kind of twisting the lens a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like just I kind of give myself permission to I mean, Gretchen Peters and Mary Gaucher, and I've done workshops with them before, as well as other really talented songwriters, and they all kind of say the same thing. They said, "Don't." This is not my quote. This is like, I think Gretchen was the one that said this to me last. Don't confuse the facts with the truth. You can have a lot of truth in a song. It doesn't have to be like, you can't say, oh, I can't say that because that's not really what happened. It's like, it doesn't matter. Where's the truth in the song? Like, tell the truth. And that will shine through, and you don't have to get into the nitty gritty of what actually happened. And that was a really helpful thing for me to kind of realize that, there's no, you don't have to be true to the story. You have to be true to what it is you're trying to communicate, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm definitely going to do this more with my newer music. I feel like the whole thing with Dear Diary, I just had to write those songs. And because I wrote them, I was like, I'm just going to release them and hope I survive. But a lot of the songs that I've been writing recently, especially in co-writes, that's our timer, but we'll keep going for a little. Especially in co-writes, this is why I love co-writing, because you have two or three writers in a co-write together, and you're all writing about something that means something to, all of us, so we're all excited about writing the song, but we're blending all of our perspectives and experiences, so there's a whole mix, and it's not your story 100%. And so that's why I really try to do co-writes a lot, and I've grown a lot as a songwriter on my own, because now I'm starting to branch out and write not 100% true stories to the facts like you were talking about, but still write from, say, like a feeling or experience that inspired it, but not every fact in the song is true. And I do that in co-writes, so that's helped me a lot with my, self-doubt, being able to do that in co-writes and say, hey, I can write a song that's not 100% real, true story, and still connect to it. Because I was so afraid, like, oh no, like, am I gonna seem fake if I make stuff up? But that's not true. Like you said, it's art. So yeah, that's huge for me, and that's something I've learned through co-writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm a huge fan of co-writing. And ironically, I went for a very long time without actually co-writing with anybody. And I've only really got back into it in the last year or so. And it's just, I've missed it. I used to write with my cousin growing up, and we never called it co-writing. We just called it hanging out together. But that was really like my first experience with co-writing. And so, and I went for a really long time in my life. Well, I went for a very long time without actually writing. I sort of hit this, like, I don't know, for lack of better expression, way to do it, like almost like a negative bell curve in my early adult. I was just so busy doing everything else in my life that I wasn't making time for music. It just kind of left me for a while. But now that I'm kind of on the upswing of that again, and I've kind of reconnected with it, I've also reconnected with co-writing, and it's just so special. It can be challenging. I mean, you have to find the right person, or right people. You kind of find your team. It does get a little bit of, as if it's not broke, don't fix it for me. Like, if you find somebody that you write well with, I do find I kind of gravitate back to them, just because it's like, oh, that was amazing, let's do it again,
Yeah, I know. Same thing here.
Yeah, it's kind of like the weirdest speed dating ever, don't you
Yeah.
think? You gotta kind of try it out, see if the dynamic's there, and then it's kind of like, well, that was fun. No, but co-writing's fantastic, and it is really great for overcoming self-doubt, like you say, because you're part of a team, so you're all working together, supporting each other. It's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it looks like you and I might have to do some co-writing.
I would be completely up for that. You have my details, so feel free to reach out. I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
That'd be brilliant.
That'd be really fun. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, our timer went off a bit ago, so let's wrap things up. Before we go, Tara, can you share your final thoughts or piece of advice to anyone listening who is struggling with self doubt?
I think I'll give this advice to anyone listening, but if I could have given myself advice about 20 years ago, I just would have said, stop caring so much about what everybody else thinks and get out of your own bloody way. Pardon my language, but that I have been my biggest obstacle for the last 20 years. And that, I think, if you can find a way to get out of your own way, that's when things start happening for you.
Fantastic, fantastic advice. Tara, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, it was great. So, can you share with everyone where they can find you on social media and your website and listen to your music, which will be out by the time this episode is out?
Oh, well, my website is www.tarahenton.com. My handle on all social media is Tara Henton Music. And music wise, my debut single came out back in September, so you can find that on all sort of streaming and download platforms. It's called Now That You're Gone. And I'm really excited that my second single is going to be coming out on the 5th of November called Wild Horse. So be sure to check that out.
I definitely will. I'm so excited.
Me too.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again for joining me.
Oh, like I say, it's been my pleasure. It's been like a very quick 35 minutes or so.
Oh
It's
no,
gone
yeah,
by
for
very
real.
quickly.
Oh, these episodes go so fast. It's like, this is why I love doing this podcast, because it's very chill, genuine conversations, and we get so into it that like I kind of forget half the time I'm actually recording on my end here. So it's like really weird when the timer goes off and it's like, oh wait, we're actually recording this.
That can't be. It's not possible. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again, listeners. Thank you for listening to this episode on songwriting and self-doubt with Tara Henton. And of course, until next time, stay right on track.